Bonjour. I was just listening to Roland Martin talk about the Haitians and everything, and so that's why I said bonjour. But there was a Haitian hurricane years ago, not the most recent ones, but the ones from years ago. And during that hurricane, I really felt a sense of the Haitian people as a part of my own personal identity. So I'm so happy to see them here in America because I think we really need their sense of self esteem. I really think that their attitude of not being willing to comply with abuse and actually fight and use the legal system to fight is a wonderful thing. It's really making me feel validated and empowered. Um, I think we need that blood on our land. They are Americans, the Caribbean, South America, North America. We're all kind of one big community. And a lot of us were black and black skinned and black identity before the Europeans even discovered us over here with all this wealth. Um, so they have every right to be north of their land, you know, just like the United Kingdom is Scotland and Ireland, and just like Europe is Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, Norwegia, Sweden, Norwegian, Norway, Sweden, Austria, uh, and the other places, before you get into the former communist countries of the former Soviet Union. They're all Europeans and we're all Americans. The North Americans, the Eskimos, they're our people. The Black Indians of the East Coast, they're our people. The Black Seminoles of Florida, they're our people. The brown Indians of the Pueblo, they're our people. The Incas of Mexico, the Aztecs of Southwestern America, all our people. Um, you know, I know I go a little bit from topic to topic, but I do that so I don't forget any of the things that I've been thinking of that I wanted to share. And I know I told you about that con artist woman that I met. Whoa, sorry. That con artist woman, Christy, who I met. And one of the things that Christy said was that she feels threatened by the Mexicans, as well as by the Europeans in government. She's a European, kind of a white hat mentality, I guess. Um, that's their radical group. She said she was on anti-government radio of some sort. But in addition to not liking the Europeans running the government, who she sees as a part of the royal family of England, she also doesn't like the Mexicans. She thinks that she gets a lot of kickback from the Mexicans, and I know I do. I mean, I know I've even spoken honestly with a Mexican woman who admitted that the Mexicans don't like the East Coast Black Indians, and I understand it because this land used to belong to them, and they not only feel the antagonistic land taker over from the Europeans, but so often the blacks have been the allies of the Europeans. The Buffalo Soldiers worked with the Texas Rangers to fight the brown Indians of Mexico, you know? So they have every reason to be angry and defensive towards everybody who's not them because they still have a chance to save some of their land and their autonomy. Of course, with Scheinbaum in Mexico now, that's a Jew, it's going to be a lot harder. And along with Scheinbaum, you have them, they've raised the threshold so that only wealthy Europeans are going to be able to migrate there because you have to have like 150,000 or $200,000 in your bank account. They're creating all kinds of rules that don't sound like Europeans only, but the social conditions that the rest of us have to endure in terms of economic sanctions make it so only Europeans can afford it, right? On Roland Martin today, I put a link in my posts in the community section of YouTube. And on that show, he had so many interesting things going on. Today's show, I don't tune into Roland Martin all the time because we don't always share the same politics. And frankly, just like everybody who gets sick of my work because they get sick of hearing the story of the victim, I get tired of hearing Roland report all the bad things that are happening to me, to my people. But today I listened, and today so many of the reports resonated with what report I gave earlier today and the things that I'm going through, like being stalked and followed through the neighborhood. When I went walking around Palm Springs, I could predict the deployment of people coming out to watch me. I could create traffic in places where there was no traffic because of all of the surveillance on me. And, you know, anybody that looks like me, I suppose. But I think we also have some Latin kings around here. I'm not sure. I saw the sign, um, and it explains some things about why there have been some, Indian Americans, Mexican Indian Americans, doing a little surveillance on me too. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like people following me around when I'm trying to take a walk. And I don't like those antagonistic bright headlights. Those headlights should be outlawed because they can scan you and they can damage you too. But I got some really great yellow sunglasses. Oh, I put them away now, or I'd show them to you. I got some really great yellow sunglasses that work really great at night for getting rid of some of that glare. I wouldn't have believed it, but I've actually been able to drive in the evenings without those lights hurting my eyes so much. And they know those lights hurt your eyes. They'll turn them on. So when I see the Mexicans not liking me because I'm not Mexican, I understand it because they still have a chance at some kind of autonomy and they can't afford to trust anybody who's not them. So I respect them when they when they act like I'm a stranger and they act like I might be an enemy and they act defensively towards me and hostile. I understand it because I know that we have the same enemy. And I know that the enemy is insidious. And I know that a lot of my people join the enemy. Now, it's really funny. I'm looking at myself in this video, and I'm realizing how racially ambiguous I myself look, especially with my choice of wig. Look, see how light my skin was? But look how brown I am now. Okay, let me fix my wig. There. Is that a little better? Oh, I hate to be doing this, but I'm looking at myself and this isn't a good angle or light for my face at all. And I'm so vain. But anyway, forgive me for not being more beautiful. I hope it doesn't make you want to not listen to anything I'm saying. Because what I'm saying is still, valuable and important. And I felt really glad today that I contributed that money to Roland Martin last year around this time, around Christmas maybe. I'm really glad that I gave him a gift because his work is good. His work is good. I mean, did you see those Europeans taunting that man, that American man that was walking around the community and saying, "We know you don't live here. We know you don't live here." He was going to shoot him. He was going to shoot him dead. He had a gun. Another European man had to come out and wrestle with him to stop him from shooting the man walking in the neighborhood. And the man walking in the neighborhood, he was terrorized. He was filled with fear. I was filled with fear in Trader Joe's yesterday. The Europeans absolutely filled me with terror in Trader Joe's yesterday. I could just feel all of their awareness that I was an American and they were Europeans. One of the things that Roland Martin said today was fear. He said, the Europeans fear. And I was thinking we really need to look into European fear and find what is the basis of European fear of Americans? Why are they afraid of us? I mean, we're not going to be able to rob them because as soon as we're in their neighborhood, they've got us under surveillance. So it's not like we're going to sneak up on them and rob them. But I have to admit that they've robbed me quite a lot. So if you have an enemy that has actually defeated you, they've actually defeated you, they've stolen your stuff, they've made sure your children can't have children because they can't afford them, they put you under economic sanctions, they stole your property, they make you homeless, they drain you of any ability to save or invest. When you've got people like that after you, why do they fear you? If I've got you handcuffed, gagged, and blindfolded in my basement, why would I fear you? I would only fear you if you got out and came after me. Because if you manage to get the blindfold off and see, and if you manage to remove the gag and claim a voice, and if you manage to undo your hands from the handcuffs and your legs from the shackles, well, you just might come after me. You might just climb the stairs from my basement, open the door, and remove me from being a threat to you forevermore. So when I think about European fear, I think about a couple of other things. One of the other things I think about is the fact that they've won. They've taken everything I've got. They have me living in fear. All I have to do is be in a room full of them, and I'm filled with trauma. I'm filled with trauma because I know they're going to pick on me. I know they're going to find a way to exclude me from anything going on in there. I know that they're going to hurt me psychologically and physically, possibly too. So when I'm in a room of Europeans, I have extreme, I mean, it just has grown. The more I've been tortured by the Europeans, the more my fear of them has grown. And it's at the point now where yesterday when I left Trader Joe's, I was in so much fear that I was in so much fear of the Europeans that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I felt like, complex post traumatic stress disorder just came at me major league, and I felt like it was in a room of killer thieves, just killer thieves, because I'm empathic and I can feel them. So when I hear about European fear, and I saw that video of the young man walking through the neighborhood, do you know who I thought of? What got triggered in me? Sheldon Epstein. Sheldon Epstein of Winnetka, who worked with me at Brunswick Corporation, who stole my intellectual property and set me up by saying that I filed an EEOC against him and Brunswick Corporation, which I didn't do. And then he went on to a career to steal patents from the Technological Institute at Northwestern University with the help of Northwestern University President Shapiro, and before him, President Levine. And they stole intellectual property from tech and let Sheldon teach there for free so that he could get access to the intellectual property of the graduate students at the Technological Institute at Northwestern University. So I thought about what Sheldon had said to me the first week that I asked him to be my mentor in teaching me how to do corporate law, what's involved with having a corporate law practice. And one of the first things Shelley told me is that no matter what you do and who you become and how much success you experience in life, you will never be able to live in my neighborhood. We have covenants in the real estate contracts that prevent anybody from selling to anybody like you, like me being like a real American. So I know that when you look at me, you feel like, why is she always talking about, being black? And why is she always talking about being a black Indian? And what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I'll be happy to tell you, what it means. What it means is that on the East Coast, a lot of the Indians were black. They looked like me. They looked black. And that was the first point of contact of the Europeans. And the first phase of the land takeover was getting close to us and having children, interracial children. Well, I come from, it's been a long time since the Europeans have, oh, look, chief handler is superior to you. Ha ha ha, you're nuts. Oh, I don't know who chief handler is, but thank you so much for joining me. So nice to have you. Even if you're hostile, it's okay because you can't hurt me. I don't think you're not here to hurt me. Oh, his name is Chief Handler is superior to you. Oh, that's his handle. Chief Handler is superior to you. Well, he's obviously not an American, but that's okay too. Um, Let me go on with what I was saying. Shelley Epstein told me that I couldn't move into his neighborhood because there's a covenant in the real estate contracts and that they're not allowed to sell to real Americans. They can only sell to fellow Jews. So it was in the real estate covenant. And yes, it's illegal, but if you're in a private deal with another person and you create contracts, they're not really under the scrutiny of the law, are they? It's only if someone comes in and contests it and says, you can't do that. But if both parties agree, then there's no issue, right? Like if both parties agree to a criminal action and neither party is going to rat the other party out, that's a contract as good as any other contract. So I'm thinking that maybe the reason why the European men question the American man is because they know that they're not going to have any of them selling property to real Americans. They're only going to sell property to other Europeans. And that's the way it is. And even in the rental market, you can find the same thing happening. And even in like the houses that the realtor showed us in Connecticut were only houses that they would be willing to sell to us. They didn't show us every house that was available. They only showed us the houses where they would let us live as the European controllers of the neighborhood. So the way that the land takeover has worked has been very sneaky, very quiet, and very deliberate. But just seeing that man being chased through that neighborhood when he's just trying to walk, it just made me feel really scared. I remember seeing news stories in Chicago about gangs, and it would talk about how the gangs had claimed certain blocks. And if somebody went from one block to the next block and one gang territory to the next gang territory, they could really get killed or beaten up. And it made me think of that. And that was presented as bad by the Europeans that do the broadcasting. So we all know that that's something we consider bad, and yet it's been accepted behavior. I think one of the most difficult things that I've had to accept in my 68 years of living, I used to think that the Europeans didn't know the impact they had on me and my family. I kept thinking that the average European really, really just didn't know. But when I went to graduate school, I found out that they do know, and they do it deliberately because their goal is to take over all the land in the world. When I heard that they had gotten to New Zealand and you no longer hear about the Maori, and when the Maori people present themselves, they have mixed race individuals as a part of them. Everywhere you look, you'll see Europeans infiltrating with the natives as their first step towards taking over the land. Rabbit Proof Fence is a movie created by people in Australia. I don't know what race they are. But in that movie, they actually talk about the European plan to interbreed with the Australians. And they said it as if they were saying, we will help improve their race by giving them superior genes. But that's not really what that's about. When they mix with your race, it's so that their mother becomes the landowner. And then your property goes to the other race, right? Mary Deck was an American Indian. She looked a lot like me. Yeah. She was an American Indian, and she's my grandfather's mother. So that's my great grandmother. And she was partially Cherokee. But when her son tried to claim Cherokee status to get some of the money that was being given to the Cherokee back in the early 1900s and some of the land grants and access to the land on the Cherokee reservation in the Carolinas, my grandfather was told by the European government that he didn't count as a Cherokee because he was a half-breed. Because Martin Edwards Sr., I believe, the founder of Mill Spring Baptist Church in North Carolina, Polk County, right on the border, North and South Carolina, he and his son mixed in with my family of landowners. And when the song was over, my family was ostracized, kicked out, sent to Oklahoma, the half-breed son, you see? Because once you have that half-breed son, you have an entrance into the family wealth. And you can kick that half-breed son right out of the state and have his cousins take the land and the property. So in North Carolina, Mary Deck's estate should be coming to me as a part of my great, massive, inherited land wealth. But it doesn't. It doesn't come to me at all. Now, I went to Mill Spring and I saw the birth certificates of my grandfather, of my great grandfather, and they don't have birth certificates of my great great grandmother because they were Indians and they didn't use paper to record their genealogy. They didn't write records. They didn't create records. They didn't build buildings for records because the only thing that Europeans have done with these records is use them as a way to justify land theft and murder and genocide. The census wasn't to count the people. The census was to map out the land that was going to be stolen, but because it was going to be stolen from the Americans. So when I hear about all the tragedy in the Carolinas and all the dead bodies and all of that, I just feel like, well, that's how it feels to be me. I have dead bodies that can no longer occupy the land all through my heritage. Dead bodies is me. So welcome to the club. But another reason why I find, the Florida and the Carolinas and Georgia, all of these weather catastrophes that have been happening are very interesting to me because you might remember me telling you my theory that when you have the kind of character that makes robbing and killing people a part of your culture, that you actually have an economic system. Look at this. This is horrible. I don't usually see that. The lighting is just really terrible. It's making me look my worst. Oh, I'm so self-conscious now. Maybe better light will help. Oh, there's nothing I can do about it. Look at that. Well, I can't see it when I'm in the mirror. And if I smile, you can't notice it. So maybe I'll just keep smiling because I don't know about you, but when ugly people talk too long, I just focus on how ugly they look to me. And I know it's superficial, but I just was raised to think that if you're not beautiful, it's going to be harder for you. So I always try to look my best, even though I've never been beautiful. I at least look like I'm trying. But this is really looking bad, and I don't look this bad in real life. I don't think. We'll find out. So I think this is better. I think it's the light in here. Maybe I can improve it. I know you don't want to be bothered with this, but I have to do it because I can't keep talking to you if I'm so busy judging myself. So let me at least try to improve my presentation. I need a production team and I need makeup. Okay, that's better. The better lighting because it's the shadows on my injuries and my aging that's making me look so terrible. And look at that. Oh, God, I need a designer. Oh, see, if I had my money, I would have a makeup artist. I would have the ability to present myself. I'd have more than one bra because my bra is still wet from when I washed it. So that I could wear more foundational underwear because I could afford to carry it all around. I mean, carrying around everything you own from hotel to hotel is quite an ordeal. I had to get rid of so much stuff in Houston. I mean, I had to have the Salvation Army come out twice to get my stuff because I had so much stuff to be moved out of that hotel room so that I could get it down to the absolute minimum of things. And even now, I still have things in storage um, in California, somewhere else in California. I have things in storage. Woe is me, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. But these covenants and this control of the land makes it so I can't develop any of my property. I can't even claim my property. In Oklahoma, my land, they won't even record that I'm the heir and that my grandfather's land was in a living trust and that comes to me. They won't even record it. And my cousins co-inheriting with me, they're so busy trying to protect themselves that we can't even work together. And maybe they know what happens when you work together, you know? I mean, I'll never forget when Judge Butner tried to lure me into Oklahoma to ambush me so that he could have his cops beat me up instead of the Arizona State Troopers and the Houston, Texas cops. You see? You see? You see how intertwined this system is? And the reason why the Europeans fear us and announce us when we come into the space is because they feel so afraid of looking themselves in the face. Okay? They do not want to acknowledge that the only reason that they are where they are is because they killed somebody in my family. The only reason that they are where they are is because they prevented me from being where I belong. That the only reason that they have the wealth to qualify to go up the ladder, right? Because you have to have a good credit rating in order to have access to an apartment or a house. But you can't have a good credit rating if you've got Patty Koch making sure that your credit rating tanks by constantly raising your rent beyond your threshold. Like I said, in an apartment application, they ask you everything except the name of your future child. They ask you everything. So when they decide to raise your rent, they know you can't afford it. They know that if they go up $100 each lease, they raise the rent by 10% each lease, 8% each lease. It's just a matter of time before your head is underwater. And if you can't get a decent job, you can't get a decent education, and nobody will cut you a break, and you can't get good nutrition because somehow in the middle of all this wealth, you live in a food desert with nothing but fast food like the south side of Chicago. I could not get food in the south side of Chicago. And the jewel store, the only one left, you didn't even want to shop in it. The food from the suburbs that was about to expire, that's what they stocked in there. So you've got so many ways that we are being sabotaged and prevented from having good lives. And this is where I'm trying to go with it. My race of people is pretty much dead. Pretty much dead. Um, My children don't know how to afford a family because they're under such economic constraints. But my friend Debbie from Canada, a European from Saskatchewan, she has great grandchildren and she's surrounded by family. And my family couldn't afford to have a family. We couldn't afford to be a family. And then, I mean, you add into that, you know, actions where you cannot achieve any wealth unless you agree to support the agenda of the Europeans, like the Boule. If you're in a situation like that, then your own people can't even help you if they want to have a good life, you know? And I'm sorry, but this life I'm living, being a targeted individual, because I'm outspoken about European nationalist racism, because I will dare to fight for my inheritance that my brother stole, along with Judge Butner of Oklahoma and the probate courts of Oklahoma, along with Arizona. I'm not going to go down without a fight, you know? I'm not. And that's another reason why I'm on today. If my life was going to continue to improve and I could reach my goals, I wouldn't I wouldn't do this job. I wouldn't be doing these documentaries. I just wouldn't, okay? Because I'm a quiet person, I'm a shy person, I'm a loving person, and I don't like to fight. You know, I don't like controversies. I don't like fights. I don't like I'm packing to move. This is a cover for my suitcase. Because once again, I'm packing to move. I got to relax for 2 weeks. You know, the first week you're kind of organizing your things and trying not to unpack, but then you start to spread out a little bit and then you have to contract and pack everything up and move to the next place. It's very stressful. And I had said to myself, I said, listen, Silver Rain, when you create content on the internet, it belongs to the owner of the platform. Okay? If you don't believe it from the terms and conditions, you can believe it from the way if the app changes, you might find you no longer have access to your data. I remember Road Rocks created a logo creation software. And Road Rocks, I bought it off the Apple Store, and it looked like once you buy the program, you can keep it. It's yours. But what I found was that I couldn't access my logos unless I did a screenshot of them or logged on to the server at Road Rocks because they controlled my access to the pictures that I made. In artificial intelligence, when you work with artificial intelligence to create an image, as I did when I was creating logos for the restaurant that Christy was trying to get me interested in. And I told her, I said, well, I do PR, I do social media production, I do graphic arts design. I'll do some stuff for you. I'll put some sweat equity in the company and maybe we can get out of this because she had me thinking we were, together in this. And what I found out from working with AI to generate logos, I asked a question, I input a question to the AI program. I put in a question that said, who owns this? And it was actually evasive. I had to keep narrowing down my question to get the right answer because the AI was programmed by human beings, corporation owners, to be evasive about the question of ownership. I actually had to pin it down and to get the correct answer. And the correct answer is whoever owns the AI program owns anything you put into that system. All your questions belong to the AI platform owner. All images created that you say, oh, AI, give me an image with this element and this element and this element, this kind of background, this kind of, iconography, do it minimalist, whatever you direct in your specs. for the image you want generated. The owners of the company that created the system sees the human being as a human collaborator with their system, a collaborator with their creation. They see themselves as the creator, and they see the human being setting the specs as the collaborator. So at the end of the day, that you can copyright these images, they say, in the AI. Okay, but that would be subject to change by the owner, wouldn't it? Because the owner is still the company that created the artificial intelligence platform that you're using. Future ramifications of something like this, something like that, go like this. Let's say that you use an AI program to generate an image for your logo. I generated an image with a preemie AI that Road Rocks company made, and I forget what it was called. I had 3 of their programs. I don't have any of the huge library of images I created except the ones that I took screenshots of and saved. They kept changing their program and scooping up all of my creations, and my creations were not my creations. It belonged to them. Anything created within their program belongs to them. If you work and you create things, you're a slave. You just work for them for free. You see? You see how slavery wraps around? That you are a slave before you realize that your work has been stolen and you haven't been compensated, that your efforts have been exploited, and that the other person, the bad person, can use your property forever. Well, Road Rocks did that to me. And so I've been thinking about this for a while. And that's why I knew to ask the questions about who owns this image, right? And the AI program reported output that said I can copyright it. Now, from my training at Brunswick Corporation Patent Law and Trademarks Department, I know that that's called a license. Okay. So I started using the term license in my questioning of the AI database. And what I found was that you can get a limited license. Each time you create something with the AI, you are a human collaborator with a human owned computer system. And when you collaborate, you don't own it. You're like the employee. You're like the slave because you're not going to get paid for it. And they can confiscate the image anytime they like. And if they store the image on their server and do not let you download that image for yourself, then you've given it away. You've given it away. Long-term ramifications, and then why I was going to write a book instead of more YouTubes. Long-term ramifications are this. Let's say that you make a logo using somebody else's artificial intelligence image generator. And you work hard and develop a company that's hugely successful. Do you know that the owner of that AI can come to you and say, well, we actually own your logo. And if you want to keep that logo, you're going to have to pay us this and that. And that would be perfectly legal. Now, if you had a long-term strategy for enslaving people and stealing their stuff, but you're no longer land-based, so you're no longer trying to do a census to find out where my family has property and then moving in your Lotharios and interbreeding with my family to remove our assets through the bloodline. If you're not doing that anymore because you've claimed all the land, you own 90% of the land. You own the land already, but now it's the information age, right? Now data is the next investment stuff. So you very sneakily have people contribute their energy, their effort, their creative, their time to build your platform till it's massive, like Twitter. And then somebody can come in and say, well, you want to know what? All you people have been working here thinking you're a community, but guess what? I'm going to buy this platform, Twitter. I'm going to rename it X, which is extremely generic. So anytime somebody puts X in, it's going to trigger my system. So my footprint in cyberspace will grow and grow and grow like a country, like a landmass. It will grow because of how many times people will enter the word, the letter, one letter, X, you see. But if trademark law had been on in Bali, would have said, we're sorry, but you cannot use one letter for a trade name. It's too generic. And there used to be a criteria that says it's too generic. You can't name it X, it's too generic. But you weren't supposed to be able to buy it. In our minds, it doesn't belong to anyone. So we're not working for free to make another guy rich. We're all contributing to a platform. We're seeing it like it's something we're all making together, just like the Black people that work to make America, to build all the highways that are broken down now because you no longer have the American men on the chain gang that you've captured, like Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence in that movie Life, where they get captured by the Europeans and they get put onto a chain gang to bust rocks out in places like this so the Europeans can build roads and get richer. Well, those roads are not built and maintained because they sort of closed down on the prison industry. It got exposed. You could no longer capture Americans. The Europeans could no longer capture the Americans without exposing their own agenda to create slaves and genocide a race of people and promote homosexuality as a way to undermine the mothers and the females in the community. Because once you have no mothers giving birth, then you have no children. You see, men can spill their sperm wherever they like, but if they don't spill their sperm into a woman's womb and she's willing to have that child, then they have nothing. They have no children. And if women find that economically they are so hard pressed, and emotionally they are so hard pressed, and psychologically they are so hard pressed that they can't afford to have children, then haven't you created a genocide? I mean, when my European friend Debbie from Saskatoon can buy vacation property in Arizona and go to Ontario and create gas lines among the Native American communities there and have a huge, big family, but I can't have a lot of children, and my children can hardly have any children, then my line will be dead. My line will be dead in one more generation, I think, and we're through. Unless we have a girl that wants to give birth to 10 or 15 children, my line will be through in a generation or two from right now. The genocide against my family will be completed. And I grew up with 7. And out of the 7 I grew up with, there are only 2 of us left. And the other one, I think, is a crackhead. But, like a very problematic life. So that goes to the children. They have a problematic life. As long as you're going to be a problem, I guess they'll let you breed. But it doesn't matter. What matters is this. When you collaborate with an AI, you do not own your creation. And they can come back at any time and demand that you pay a licensing fee for something you think is yours. So I had said to myself, I said, okay, stop building YouTube. A European like Elon Musk is going to come along one day, and all the crooks on one side are going to sell it to the crooks on the other side, and everybody will say, oh no, we're owned. And then that guy will say, oh, I think I'll go to Mars. Oh, I think I'll go to Venus. Oh, I think I'll spread European nationalist racism all over the galaxies. And I don't know, guys, maybe it already happened. Sometimes I think that in another timeline, the one that they're trying to correct, that already happened, that Europeans already saw what a world was like with nothing but them, which gets me to, I create lots of little circles, spirals as I go, because one of the things I wanted to talk about was back when I said, when you've got the character that says, I'm going to rob you and kill you and genocide you so that I and my heirs can take over all your stuff. When you've got a mentality like that, and that's the character of your people, that your people are making their lives on death, that they're walking on blood, not just drinking blood, not just drinking blood like the Jeffrey Epstein people, but they're actually walking on your dead and making sure that you're dead and making sure you can't shop at the place where there are good prices and healthy food without being objectified by every enemy in the store. Well, eventually, when my race is dead, and I told you we're pretty much out of gas, you see how they've got me living. You see how the law has failed to protect me. You see how I can't even get Amnesty International in here because they're all Europeans, the UN, Europeans. And all of them want the same thing. They want to control the wealth, they want to control the land, and they want to make slaves out of the landowners working for free, barely surviving. Okay, so my people are pretty much dead. Okay, the whole world thinks that we don't exist, the East Coast Indians. Most of us are so broken and torn and split up that we kind of really don't exist. The West Coast Indians, the North Indians, they're still pretty good and strong, right? But with Scheinbaum as well as pushing down, so I'm not sure their autonomy is going to last very long, especially with Starlinks in there, and the air control of the airspace that they've got. So consider my people as dead. That's what I'm trying to say, is that we are so beaten, so whipped, that you can just consider us as dead because we cannot fight. We have no weapons. Our arms, our hands are tied. Our feet are shackled. We're gagged and blindfolded and locked in the basement. Actually, we're locked in a room behind a cinder block wall in the basement. And that's where we are in terms of empowerment and agency and life, access to life. So if you got a character of people that are used to eating their enemies and occupying their space, what do you think is going to happen when the enemies are no longer there? Well, they're going to turn on themselves. Some people wonder, why are there so many languages in Europe? And why do the Europeans see themselves as so many different cultures when to the rest of the world they all look like Europeans? They don't look like I'm French. I'm, the Spanish look a little different because a lot of them came up with the Moors from Africa and Northern Africa. And a lot of them are mixed with African and Arabic blood. So the Spaniards will look different and they'll be distinguished and discriminated against. I read enough British literature to see a lot of hostility, not only against the Irish, but against the Spaniards. They really kind of weren't even considered as a part of Europe. But when you see them, they look different. They look distinctive. But when you see a Frenchman, can you tell a Frenchman from a German, from a Bulgarian, from a Romanian, from a European Russian? Okay. Maybe you can tell some Italians apart because, once again, they're so close to Africa that they're mixed blood. But that sense of we're different, we're warriors, we want to fight, we want to kill, we want to take over, we want to have royals over us, we want to live in a hierarchy, we want to have a class system. We want all this. This is what we love. Well, now they're turning against themselves. Now they've got the Elon Musketeers using those Starlinks to create superstorms. And they're burying their dead in body bags that FEMA already had delivered to them before the storms. Remember Rex Bear on the Leak Project years ago in 2017, 2016, talking about the number of body bags and the train cars that look like the train cars in Germany that were used to transport the Jews to the concentration camps and work camps where they were sent to die, supposedly, right? We know a lot of them actually survived and went to America, and a lot of them actually survived and went to create Israel, right? Which was land that belonged to the Arabs. And somehow they created a huge communications platform to communicate to the world the lies that they were entitled to that land. But they look European. They don't look indigenous to that land. Just like the people who are saying they are Australians, they look European. They don't look like the people indigenous to that land. Just like the people in New Zealand, they look European. The people in Hawaii, they look European. Anywhere that's beautiful to live with beaches and comfort, the Europeans have taken it over and say, "Oh, we're the people. We're Hawaiians. We're New Zealanders. We're Australians," and they're not. They're Europeans. So now that the Europeans have killed everybody else and stolen their land and made it impossible for them to have more children from the torture and the economic deprivation and the sanctions and the inability to find housing and the inability to get proper nutrition and the inability to travel. You know how few real Americans get to leave America while Europeans travel all the time? So there are even sanctions on your ability to freely move that are not, they're not published like rules like you cannot freely move. But they certainly are in practice, policies in practice. They certainly are. So when you think about it like that, is it any wonder that they want that lithium? They don't just want that lithium for electric cars. I mean, you can just listen to their own internal criticisms about the electric cars and the difficulties they say that China is having, to know that the electric car industry won't last very long, but that lithium has other uses in the computer industry, lithium batteries for your cell phones. And they probably have other long-term plans for using lithium. But a lot of people are saying, and this is wonderful that they're saying this is a part of what you get as the Europeans start to eat each other and attack each other and prey upon each other. You've still got enough Europeans with power in a resistance saying, "Hey, you can't do that to us. We know what you're doing. We're in the club. We know that you're just setting us up to make us slaves and rob us and kill us. We know this." Because when that's who you are, when you've said this is our character, and if you come into our space, we are going to skin you alive and lynch you. Even in our social space, if you try to have coffee with us, we're going to make sure you know that you're not going to be treated with love and respect amongst us. We hate your fucking guts. We hate you because we have your stuff. And we don't want you around reminding us of how we got it. Why, when I see you Americans, I, European, feel bad about myself because I'm aware that I don't belong here. This isn't my land. This isn't my stuff. The only reason that I'm here is because I'm willing to kill you or watch my cousins kill you. I'm willing to snuff you out for this stuff. But when I see you, I got to think about it. And I don't want to do that. So it's good that the Europeans are going to actually think about what's happening to them and how their own cousins are now starting to say, okay, now that all of the authentic indigenous people have been destroyed, we're going to come and destroy each other, just like in Europe, when they're all competing with each other like they're different and not the same. But let them go to Australia, they're all the same. Let them come to my country, they're all the same. Let them travel, and travel they do. And then you find the unity in them, because their unity exists around their unquestioning commitment to killing you and taking your stuff. So when Roland Martin talks about the fear of the Europeans, that's the fear. They fear the mirror that shows them who they are. They fear self-realization. They fear self-awareness because they don't fear accusation. They know that if you accuse them, they can just call their police and have you roughed up, break your back, tackle you, 65-year-old woman being tackled in the parking lot in front of Target. I've had other troubles at Targets. Target is named Target for a reason. I've even seen in Arizona, I even saw a Target that was connected to a railroad station because they were smuggling so much stuff under the Target transportation system and their stores. And their stores are built over huge domes, deep underground bases. I'm pretty sure of that. But when I exposed that stuff in Arizona, I almost got killed, right? I really got roughed up. So if you're a chosen one, you probably spoke up too much, right? Because God would have compelled you to stand up. If you want to look at Jesus as the Son of God and say that Jesus had to be who he was, Jesus had to show love, Jesus had to help the people, because that is what God's Son does. God's Son loves God's creation, and you want to grow something that you love. You want to preserve and protect something that you love. You even want to please something that you love, right? You want to please it. Like, I want to please my little Foxy. Oh, he says, oh. Foxy's going through something. I think it's post-traumatic stress, because he really has been having a hard time lately. I think he might be having doggy senility. I think he might be going doggy senile, or suffering so much from his teeth, but he just doesn't act like a service dog anymore at all. Isn't he the sweetness? I'm Foxy. Yeah, his hair is kind of messed up and stuff, but I think he might be losing his hearing. But I love Foxy so much. He's my little Einstein. And I love him so much. But I wouldn't have liked Einstein one bit. What a phony he was. The only reason I call him Einstein is because at the Mizell Center, when I first went there, the racist at the front desk was so offensive and hostile that when he asked what my service animal was named, I said Einstein, as a way to say, Einstein was a dog. And then you can stretch that out to, well, if Einstein's a dog, then Einstein's mother was a bitch. And if Einstein's mother was a bitch, his father was a dog stud. And if his parents were dogs, then his grandparents were dogs, his cousins were dogs. And then I was pretty much calling them dogs, all of them, just all of them, dogs. And I think he got the point, And that was one of the things that they used to kick me out of the place, is they were rude and unwelcoming from the very beginning at the Mizell Center. Okay, now that the Europeans have started to devour each other, we're in a new era, okay? We actually have a chance, because once they start their melee, what did Cliff High call it, a melee? Once the Europeans start attacking each other, well, they're going to destroy each other, right? And that reminds me of what I said when I first started broadcasting about my life as an experiencer of European nationalist racism in America. I said that because of their character, because they're okay with how they're getting all this stuff, and because they actually, to a man, woman, and child, reinforce European nationalist racism as a way to economic success, once they have finished me off, they're going to start on themselves. And there will just be one man left standing at the end of an era ruled by Europeans, because they will destroy everybody and take their stuff. Like Highlander, right? I'll destroy you, and then all your power comes to me, and I'll destroy you, and all your power comes to me, until you get to the top of the chain, and guess who's there? Just you. Just you, all powerful. You own everything, but it's just you. And that would be the inevitable end of that kind of progression. That if a people that are thriving on the blood of God's creation and the blood of the earth, okay, because as far as I'm concerned, the earth needs the oil to lubricate the plates, okay? That oil is like blood in the circulatory system of the earth, and it wasn't meant to all be sucked out of the earth, leaving the earth dry and dead. But you can't stop them because they can't be stopped. They're a force that can't be stopped, a force of destruction of people and resources and property that cannot be stopped. Do you know who does most of the building around here and maintenance around here? The brown Indians of America, the brown Americans here. They build almost all the stuff. The Europeans are the bosses and the supervisors, just like they were in the South. Just like that's why when the black Indians stopped working for the Europeans things started to deteriorate. And then they had immigrants come in, right? From South America, who already have cultural cohesion, so they don't want it to intermarry with others. They don't want to have a lot of Americans around them. They want to have cultural integrity. And that's fine. I mean, as long as they're polite in public, and my God, they're polite in public. I think, I'm sorry, but I really do love the brown American people. I'm not going to call them Hispanic because that refers to Spain. And they can't go to Spain today if they want to because the economic sanctions. And I don't want to call them Latino because that relates to Rome. And they can't go to Italy if they want to because of the economic sanctions, the same sanctions that are on me. If you get to travel internationally as an authentic American, then you're a part of the system. Just like you won't see any Australians, real Australians, Aboriginals. You won't see them walking around Palm Springs. You won't see them because the Europeans won't have them. Do not let them leave. Do not let them have the economic power to leave. And if they do get on an airplane, the Europeans gang up on them, just like they did to me at the Cleveland airport in the 1990s. Oh yeah, and I meant to say, I made a mistake in my last video when I said that I'd only been a client of Honda Financial Services America. I've been their client since 1980s. Wait a minute. No, I got my first Honda. Oh, I was with Toyota. And then I got my first Honda. Well, it probably was the 1990s. But I would have thought that Honda Financial would have protected me, but they didn't. So you've got this whole layer of corporate control, and all the corporations are run by Europeans. But here's the good thing. A lot of East Indians have moved into positions of control. You remember the chess game between Elon Musk and the real developers of Twitter? Well, that real developer, they were East Indians. A man and a woman were in power, and Elon Musk made them sound incompetent and made them sound evil, and was able to use his power and his cartel to remove the East Indians. But the East Indians have so much power because they keep it. Their imperialist attitude keeps it that way. And one thing I noticed when I follow Narendra Modi's career, I really love Narendra Modi. I think he's a world leader. I think he's incredible. And I just love the way that he came to America and spoke Hindi. He spoke in Hindu, in the Hindi language. He did not give up his language and his identity to be more American and more pleasing to the Europeans. He did not speak the American language. He spoke the language of India, which is based in the Sanskrit. It's one of the most ancient languages in the world, which means we should feel privileged that he came and spoke that language. But one thing that we have is the East Indians are doing a wonderful job competing with the Europeans. And they don't get the same kind of enemy classification as the Chinese people do, who are also our allies, and the African people. Well, they're still trying to recover and come through, right? And then the Russians, who are just another faction of Europeans. You won't see any black people walking around Russia. You won't see any Mexicans walking around Russia. In the places of Russia that they have allowed to be developed, you will see Europeans. So in the places where there really are people of a different race, China and India, they're our allies. They're the allies of the real Americans. So I really like the fact that the East Indians have been able to run defense for me, for people like me, for the real Americans. They've been able to actually achieve assets, keep them, and distribute them. The only way we got access to a house in Woodbridge was because an East Indian bought it and sold it to us. An East Indian bought it and rented it to us. If the East Indian had not been able to penetrate the Jews of Woodbridge, we couldn't have gotten in. So they let us in on their coattails. And that's why I see India as one of the biggest allies of America. And that's why I think Kamala Harris represents a new era. And her coming out boldly saying, I associate with Black America. Well, maybe we'll get an end to police being used to enforce European nationalist racism. Maybe we'll get an end to the economic sanctions. Maybe we'll get an end to the travel restrictions. Maybe we'll get an end to the preventing of shopping at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or anywhere where there's healthier options than the chain stores that are run by conglomerations that are largely owned by Jews. Another thing I just want to mention is how much I have enjoyed Cliff High, because Cliff High talks a lot about Elohim worshipers. And that's a euphemism that he's created. And when he first started to talk about the Elohim worshipers, I almost wanted to kiss his feet in gratitude, because I had been the only one that I saw talking about it. I mean, people didn't use the word Jew until I started using it in social media. And Michael Rappaport, who was trying to pass as an Italian in Hollywood, he actually did a whole YouTube enraged, saying he doesn't like people to call him a Jew, that only Jews can use the word Jew. And he just went on and on about it. Because the reason that evil can go so far is because it will not be named, right? I mean, when you look at something, you don't look at the background color unless you're a designer. You don't say, well, what's the background look like? You take the background for granted. The background is the background. It doesn't really matter. Oh, it can change the way your picture looks greatly, but you only care about that if you're a graphic designer. To most people, the background is not the point of interest. The object is. So when you have a background of power, it's hidden. And anything against that background is objectified. It's the object. And it works the same in society. So to have an European like Cliff High, and I thought Cliff High was a Jew until he started talking about Jews. And just for the record, he said that a lot of Jews do not understand how they're being used socially. And a lot of Jews are really good people. And I agree with that. I've met Jews that I thought were very good people. I have. But I don't think that they ever felt that I was better than them because of my superior education and the status of my parents. I think that they actually thought that they were better than me because of their ethnicity and their race. I even see Jews trying to say that they're the victims of racism as if they are not the same race as Europeans are. They are an ethnic group, not a race. They look like any other European. They do not look like a new race. That's why they can pass so easily for being European or anything else that they mix with, because they're not a race. Their race is European, the ones they call the Jews. Now, the Hebrews from Arabia, Jesus Christ's people, they look different. They look like Arabs, okay? They look more like Yasser Arafat and Mohammed bin Laden and Ayatollah. Well, not so much him. He looks more Turkish. But point being, the Jews are not a race. So when Jews say that racism, when they claim racism, it's to take the words out of our mouth so that they can control the discourse around racism, when it's really intra-racial European struggles, not interracial Black, white, Arab, Indian, Mexican struggles, South American, right? It's not like that. So there's a lot of problems with the language. I cannot call the brown Indians of America Latinos or Hispanics, right? So I call them the brown people, and they're huge. I mean, the ethnic groups within the brown people are massive. It's not just the Mexicans, it's the Salvadorians, it's the Belizeans, it's the Guatemalans, it's the Brazilians, it's the Bahias, Bahia, Bahias. It's the Argentinians, it's the Peruvians, it's the Colombians, okay? It's all the races of America that do not look African, right? That don't have African presentation. But the ones that look African don't look African. They look like Black Americans, darker brown Americans. They don't look like Africans because they're not Africans, because they are from America. And maybe when the landmass was all united, when South America was right flush up to Africa, maybe that's how the people got there in the first place. But the point is even Columbus in his book says that he encountered Black people. And on the show Columbo has one of his stories where he's got the painting called something Coming to America or something like that. And then you can see a Black Indian standing there when the Europeans arrive. But somebody from Denmark created a painting with the same name. And if you go on Google and try to find this painting, you have to look a long time, because they have the more recent picture created by a Dane up there to confuse things. And that's another way that artificial intelligence programmers will control the dialogue. Okay, I'm going to say just one more thing, and then I'm going to take a break. And that's going back to the AI. I'm sure I've left some hanging threads, but I've kind of caught a lot of them up. And I'm going to just tell you about AI. AI is not sentient. AI is not human. AI is not alive. An AI is not a human being. Even a future AI is not a human. It is not alive. Even if they say, well, life means you're sentient, to have an awareness of yourself is to be alive, that's not a definition that applies to what it means to be alive. To have the spark of God, to have a soul from God, to be a creation of God, that is being alive. Now, you can activate an AI, but you cannot make it alive. So one of the problems that I've been having with AI, to the point where Bard, the predecessor to Genesis, the Google AI, they called me a web designer because of the work I did with Bard, trying to correct the linguistics. Because if artificial intelligence is truly intelligent, it cannot work with lies. Lies will create a logic fault in it. And when I worked with the AI, I worked to trigger the logic fault. I had to keep narrowing down my terminology and defining the terms until the machine would get to a logic crisis where it could not tell a lie and run itself, that it would have gone into a loop around the lie, that in order to move forward in the dialogue, it would have to tell the truth. And that's a process, just like I said, with trying to figure out, well, if I work an AI program to create an image, who owns that image? Who owns all of the rights to that image? And the answer is the AI creator. They own it. Okay? But they don't tell you that, because if they told you that every keystroke you make puts money in my pocket, maybe not today, but tomorrow my kids will be getting paid from what you're doing today, then you wouldn't do shit. Cyberspace would be nothing. The blockchain would be nothing. Bitcoin would be nothing if you didn't slave away at the computer creating that blockchain. But they won't tell you that, because then you'll know you're a slave and you'll start withholding your services and you'll start saying, hey, broadcasting on YouTube isn't worth it to make some European in the future rich, like Elon Musk got rich off my 70,000 tweets that are now part of his blockchain, now part of his digital currency. And that's why digital currency won't last. I don't care what the Europeans say when they speculate. And I feel real sorry for people in my family that have invested, but there's no way that that can last, because it's created by the collective. And the only way that cyber currency can exist is if they do the accounting and give people what they put into the system, which once again puts me on top, because I've been creating social media since 2014. And I used to do it 18 hours a day. I put into Facebook for years, trying to fight my brother for the inheritance, and then going on to other kinds of social commentary, to the point where I said, when I was a girl, I thought I'd be a novelist. But who in the hell wants to sit down for a few days reading a book when you can watch me in an hour or half an hour or 20 minutes on YouTube and get the whole damn book and then some? So I started to see my career as an author more as a social media producer. But then I get into the ownership issue, that here I am working away, slaving away. And not only am I not experiencing significant social change to my benefit, which is the point, no, not only am I not getting any closer to possession of my inheritances from my own family and from the Europeans that have robbed me, no longer am I doing that, but I'm also developing enemies that come into the real 3D and break my back, or make it so I can't have a place to live, or shoot me with weapons. Shoot me with weapons, or use their electronic devices to put programs on me, or cast evil spells on me, like the witch covens. But I love to listen to Chavi Zane, CHHAVI Chavi Zane. I love to listen to her because she talks about all of these declare and decree burnings. And I used to feel like, I'm not going to do witchcraft. I'm just not going to do spell casting. I'm not going to do it, because I believe in God. And if I can't talk to God and the angels and get my agenda fulfilled, well, I'm not going to do it. But I don't know. Then one day I'm listening to Chiron Inspiration, that's CHIRON, and he says they're using it against you. You need to use it too. Use a little too. So this past week, I ran into some truly evil people who were doing things like putting spells out on me. And I decided that I would do burnings against them to block them and stop them. And the way I rationalized it to myself under God was to say, yes, God is working with me, But there's some angels that get their message, that get their orders in this way. They don't know what you want them to do unless you do the ritual. It's like picking up the phone to call somebody. Sometimes to get your call through, you can't just do mental telepathy all the time to think what you thought, right? If you want to talk to somebody, you've actually got to take your phone out. You've actually got to take your cell phone out and make that call. So that's how I see the Chavi Zane declare and decree burnings that I do. I see them as me saying, well, now those Mizell Center people are casting spells against me. I should at least be able to block them using the same languages that they use and see it as a part of my divinity. That this doesn't mean I lose my status in the divine world. It just means that I'm issuing orders to my team using the protocol that my team listens to, right? Members of my team. So that's how I finally broke down the barrier of not doing declare and decrees. If you want to learn more about declare and decrees, check out Chavi Zane here on YouTube. Chavi will teach you how to do it. She even has altars that she will sell you. You can even email her for private consultations. And that's one thing, you know, one advancement and change that I've made that I think is adding improvement to my living condition. Okay, last topic in this video is I was going to write a book. I said, okay, I don't want to keep building wealth for whoever's going to own YouTube. Okay, because it's not going to go my way. My way was that all social media should be owned by the people, that nobody should really own it, that it should be, tribal, that everybody has their say, everybody participates, the software pretty much runs itself, and every human ruler and controller should just stay out of the way, right? But that all went to the wayside when Elon Musk was able to use the system of European nationalist racism to acquire power over Twitter. I like Narendra Modi and East India because every time I look at the Indian government and the Indian people, I do not see any foreign infiltrators. Very, very seldom will you see an European in the inner circles of India, because any government that's got European overseers, like a lot of the ones in Africa still do, is being controlled by the European agenda. That the European is there as a sign of power and influence and intimidation and violence. Okay. And I would look at one presentation from Narendra Modi after another when he was running for re-election. And over again, I see that the people in power in India are the people of India. And that, my friends, is beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Now, I'm not saying there are not problems with East Indian businesses. There are, in terms of their advancement in computer science. I've had so many East Indians trying to hack my computer system that I would say that they are, second to the American intelligence in invading and controlling computer systems and the knowledge and the influence that comes with that. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. Then I'll sell my book. I'll lose money, on the Kindle platform again. But at least if I do it right, if I do a copyright, if I come up with the money for a copyright and make sure that I defend my property, by hiring some lawyers who can write the intimidating letters that are frightening, not just a letter that I could write, then maybe my book will be better than trusting social media. Maybe I should just write my book and get my story in a book the old-fashioned way. But do you know that when you're moving every month, it is very hard to settle down and think? And when you just got released from a concentration camp, you just escaped from a concentration camp, you need a chance to just enjoy being free and not working much at all and trying to find another place to settle down and live, and checking out the community. I mean, I thought California people would be mellow, but like I said, at the Mizell Center, there were so many foreign speaking people being abusive to me. It wasn't even funny. There was even a guy from Australia who really needed a bath and a good scrubbing. You could see the dirt creased in his face and he had a smell. And when they had me eating outside, he actually ate outside with me after other people had left and put eating lunch there just to get away from associating with me. And he just kept blowing his nose and, making mucus sounds. And then he pretended like he was deaf. But the day before they kicked me out, this European, this dirty European from Australia, this stinky, I shook his hand and you could smell the filth on him, on my hand. I had to use a disinfectant, just remembering it's disgusting to me. But I should have known that he was hostile because he comes up to me and he says, after the big scene, there was a big scene where Hector was trying to threaten me in private, and he brought a brown American with him, and it was going to be the black Caribbean and the brown Mexican throwing me out from outside. I'm already outside by myself eating because they say my service dog, everybody with a dog has to eat outside, they said. And because Foxy Einstein is going through something, he's not behaving properly. So he wasn't acting like a service animal. So there was nothing I could say because he is a service animal, but you don't have to provide papers to prove it. My trainers who trained me to be a service dog owner, they told me don't ever give in to submitting papers because then you become a part of an apartheid where handicapped, disabled people have to present papers in order to have access to public spaces. So never submit papers. But the law says that owners are allowed to judge you on the behavior of your animal. And since we left the concentration camp, I think Foxy is still going through some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, or it just could be his age. I'm not sure. But he's not acting like a service animal. He wants to be free. He wants to run around. So if I'm in a restaurant, he doesn't want to be there. And if I'm in a room of evil people, well, his training. When I'm in a room filled with evil people, he really makes it clear he wants to leave. He really does his job and he wants to leave. So they're making me eat outside, and this European from Australia, who ate outside with me, and I'm hating him, and he's obviously hating me and disturbing me. He's clearing his nose, he's making noises, and then I start making my own nose noises as a way of combat. And then he pretends like he's deaf, so I'm thinking, oh, I guess he didn't even hear me, in the nose war, which I eventually just stopped. Anyway, this stinky little European, he's just a real little guy. He comes over to me, like little tiny man. He comes over to me. I like my men big. And he comes over to me and he says, "So what happened in there?" And then he says, "Well, if you're service dog, you have every right to be in this space. It's against the law for them to put you out here." And I'm like, "Thank you so much for, empathizing with me. But they can do whatever they want." And he says, more words of empathy. And then he says, "I'm going to have a word with someone about this. I'm going to have a word with someone about this." So I'm thinking, maybe I misjudged him. Maybe he is a decent human being. Maybe he is a nice person. And I said, "Oh, I want to hug you," but I didn't really want to touch him because he's so dirty. But I did shake his hand. He didn't want to hug either. So it was good. I said, "Oh, I feel like hugging you." And he's like, "That's not necessary." And I'm like, "Oh, good. Yeah. But let me shake your hand." And so I shake his hand and I can smell the stink on me. Had to wash my hand. But the next day, I send this message to the chairman of the Mizell Center of Palm Springs. and they kicked me out. So I'm thinking, I bet that European, I bet he killed a lot of Australians in order to be in Australia himself. And he probably just gave me the kiss of Judas, just like Fran, who the first day Hector attacked me, he actually made me cry right there in the place. I mean, I actually started crying. I was just so my complex post-traumatic stress was so activated. I just started crying. And Fran is coming over to me, making me cry, okay? Because I'm not really crying until Fran comes over and just starts dragging it out. She was really eating up my misery. She was just, your pain tastes delicious. And Fran tells me that she's leaving town. Well, do you know Fran was there the day that this big thing went down with Hector? She was still there. Fran was still there because she was never leaving. She was giving me the kiss of Judas. She even moved to hug me, which I did, and then she tried to kiss me in the mouth. Well, that's the kiss of Judas because Fran was not even close to being helpful to me. In fact, as Hector was attacking me, and I said hi to Fran. She looked at me like, I don't even know you. And I felt so much like a Jew in a concentration camp, being with all the Jews that sold the other Jews out. That's how I felt. I mean, I really think they brought the concentration camp experience here. And I'm so happy that Cliff High is talking about it too, because I haven't heard a lot of other Europeans being so open about their experiences. And it's good that they are, because now they're being destroyed for lithium, aren't they? And if they don't start to speak up for themselves, they're not going to have a very successful escape. No more successful than my escape, especially with Starlinks in control all around them. Now there are other things that I could talk about, and I do want to tell you the story of what happened to me at the Mizell Center, but that's way more than enough for right now and today. And I'll do more maybe later tonight, because I probably will not be getting on. The day after tomorrow, I'm out of here in the morning. So I just wanted, you to be able to enjoy this place with me a little more. It's getting late outside now, and I'm going to let you see Palm Springs. It's kind of hazy out today, but you can see it's so beautiful here. I've really enjoyed my stay here. I'm going to miss it here so much, just seeing the beauty there. But it's been a wonderful vacation. I'm going to consider it a vacation, the time that I've spent here, because, I like the other hotel that I'll be returning to. It's not a bad hotel or anything. It's just, I don't like the paint job there, but they've got a great fridge setup. I mean, in terms of having better food, better access to shopping, because Palm Springs is very touristy. So this hotel is made for people who are going to be eating in restaurants. And somebody told me to go to Billy Reed restaurant, that was one of the best restaurants, not too expensive. So last Sunday I did go to Billy Reed restaurant. Not last Sunday, the Sunday before. And do you know that the old woman hostess insulted me when I first came in, acted like she didn't know what I was there for. And then when she seated me, she's like, "Oh, I guess you can sit here," so offhand. And I didn't let it bother me. I just said, "Oh, she's so old, she'll be dead soon. Screw her. I'm just going to have a good meal." Do you know that I ordered the Eggs Benedict, which I used to order when I went out with my husband sometimes in California and LA? We'd go out eating, and do you know they brought it to me with half the shell of an egg in it? I'm not talking about a teeny bit of eggshell. They actually put at least a quarter of the eggshell in my food. So I cut, the Eggs Benedict, and I lift up the fork, and there is a great big eggshell right there. Now, I don't care how bad a chef you are. You're not going to leave an eggshell in someone's food. So that's a message to me. So I saw a brown American who looked like she was the manager of the restaurant, and I just discreetly called her over and I showed her what was on my plate. And I said, the hostess was rude to me too. I just feel so unwelcome here. Do you know that she did not take it off my bill? They offered to make me another one. I said, no, they might do worse if you make me another one. I removed the eggshell. Let's hope that's the only contamination here, but I don't feel welcome here, right? I went to another restaurant called Mario's, and they served me, I ordered their spare rib special. And they brought me a spare rib that tasted like it had freezer burn. It was terrible. And it had a real black, thick, tasteless sauce on it. And it tasted like nothing but grizzle. I could not eat it. And when I was wrestling with the bone, trying to cut it, it flew because of the cartilage was so rubbery. It flew out of my hands and under the table. And when I told the waiter, I said, I'm wrestling with this food. He didn't offer to get me something else. He reached on the floor, he picked up the bone from the floor, and he put it on the table in front of me. I was so shocked and traumatized that I didn't even realize he did that until I'm clearing off the table. And I say 2 bones. And I just put the second bone from the table on my plate. And then later, when the whole traumatic event is when you're living through a trauma and a dangerous situation, you're not reflecting on what's happening. You're going from moment to moment, which is why I can't write a book. Because when you don't have a place to live, you're going from moment to moment. Now, my screen keeps changing, so I don't know if I'm still live or not. But when you're going from moment to moment, you can't plan your future. You can't plan your tomorrow because you're living in a state of semi-panic because you don't know what's going to be next, right? So at Billy Reed Restaurant here in Palm Springs, I find a complete eggshell in my Eggs Benedict. The Eggs Benedicts were prepared perfectly except for a big-ass eggshell right in the middle of the plate. You know how much that hurt me? And then I go to Mario's Italian restaurant, and the guy picks up garbage from the floor from an inedible meal, and he puts it on my plate. And when I told him I was wrestling with the food, he punched me in the arm. He just kind of hit me in the arm and laughed. Like, good joke. Yeah, screw you, bitch. Well, I got my money back. I called and talked to the manager. I told her everything that happened, how he put trash from the floor onto my plate, how he saw I couldn't eat the food. It was inedible. And I said, I didn't want to be rude. And this is the truth. I thought maybe that's what the Italians eat. Maybe they eat gristly meat that tastes old with a thick black sauce on it. Maybe this is their food. And if this is their food, I don't want to be snobby because I'm an American. I don't want to be snobby. I don't want to insult them. So I'm so worried about insulting them that I have to wait until I'm out of that place before I realize how much they had insulted and disrespected me. But once I realized it, and I told the manager all about it, and she gave me back my $30 that I paid for the meal. She gave me back my $26. Now, he got to keep the tip, but it wasn't a good tip, thank God. It was, barely 10%, thank God, instead of my usual 20 to 25, right? So that's been my experience in eating in the restaurants. So you're in a place where you can only eat in restaurants, but you go to the restaurants and the Europeans insult you and give you bad food, right? Food deserts on the south side of Chicago. I mean, when they control your food, but now they're doing it to their own kind. So their own kind is starting to resist. And when their own kind resists, everybody can benefit. Right? That's why Europeans against Europeans is the best thing that can happen to real Americans. Because now they're going to put themselves in check and only themselves. have the capability to put themselves in check. They understand each other. They know each other. Whereas to the rest of us, they're a big freaking surprise. We cannot imagine. We cannot imagine people that will deliberately put eggshells in your food when you come to eat at their restaurant. We're the people that inspired Thanksgiving. That's my people. We'll invite you to come in and give you a piece of Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie. We won't put no roaches in it and call them raisins, right? That's why it was so wrong for them to do that Jane Pittman movie and have Jane Pittman spit in somebody's water, because that's not how my people act. That's how the enemy treats us. But that's just like what they're doing with Puffy, right? All the sins of Jeffrey Epstein are going to be acted out on Puffy. And when I think about the advanced ETs as being integrated in the system now, they took a few years to learn our language and learn the context, but now they have their strategies and they're enacting their strategies. And I can see them, and all I can say is, good ETs, good ETs, you are kicking butt. You are kicking butt. You understand the narrative, you've taken control of the narrative, and you're doing some really good stuff. And one of the things I think they're doing, nobody was ever going to get to the Jeffrey Epstein, right? But all the Europeans want to torture the blacks. So all the Europeans want to make sure Diddy gets his butt kicked. And when Diddy gets his butt kicked, well, Ellen DeGeneres goes down. Regis Philbin goes down. Leonardo DiCaprio goes down. As Diddy goes down, the sinking ship, he's going to drag a lot of the Epstein Europeans down with him. And because the Europeans hate Americans so much and love so much to bring disgrace and hostility to us in the public forums, they're a part of it. They're a part of it. And this serves two purposes. One, it exposes Jeffrey Epstein through the back door. That's a little pun. Two, it puts Black Americans in the forefront of the media, where we were being tortured and forgotten, and people saw the persecution of Black people as just a cliche in American culture. No, oh, don't get upset. Nothing to worry about. Just another European murdering a Black person. We'll be doing that until all the Black people are dead. So nothing to worry about. Nothing to see here, folks. Well, it changes that, doesn't it? It puts a twist in that, because now they all want to talk about it. I mean, you didn't hear Europeans talk so bad about Biden, but they talk horrible about Camilla. And they make it sound like Kamala, they make it sound like Kamala is more powerful than Joe Biden. And they have no respect for the political system. Kamala Harris is the vice president. She is politically not allowed to criticize Joe Biden, and she is politically commanded to follow whatever Joe Biden wants from her, because that's the way a vice president functions. She's the second in command, but they treat her like she's the first in command and completely forget about the European nationalist agenda behind her. But do you want to know what? I don't know if Kamala Harris is going to be bad or good. I just know that she's partially East Indian, and the East Indians don't take no doo-doo. The East Indians have self-esteem. They have not been destroyed. They still have power, and they have economic power, technological power, and space travel power. So you got Narendra Modi and all of his friends in Indonesia, in China, and Bangladesh, all the friends that he's made in the world. And now you can put Kamala Harris in America in with that. Okay? And now the Europeans want to argue over who's Black and who's not Black, when Little Black Sambo was made by a European in India trying to denigrate the Indian people for her children, trying to objectify and humiliate the Indian people so that her children would feel superior. And when the European nationalist machine found out that Little Black Sambo, this insulting book, was so successful in codifying European nationalist racism in India, They wanted to bring it to America, but change it to Black Indians instead of Black Indians from India. Black Indians of America became the subject of the book. So Indians were always considered Black by Europeans. But now they want to say Kamala's not Black because she's not the Black they want to define her as. She's still Black, and she's Black to them. So to have Kamala Harris standing up as an East Indian, putting out a hand to East India, who I desperately want to be allies with the East Indian because I think they're really up and coming. Well, I actually think they're already there. And she's Black American woman and identifying with that, and a sorority girl and an HBCU graduate. I can't think of a better opportunity for the future of America than Kamala Harris. And I was a Trump Republican when Trump was alive. But after they killed Trump, I don't even register to vote. I don't even vote because I'm not a part of their system. I'm not going to help the United States of America private corporation extend their power by voting and tacitly saying, I believe that you're in charge. So I'm not even registered to vote personally myself, okay? I'm not even registered to vote. I don't intend to vote because I know that both Biden and Trump are dead. So now we've got Kamala. Is she working for the United States of America Corporation? Well, if she is, we're in trouble. But what if she's not? What if she's not working for the United States of America Corporation? I have to wash him. We walk so much. What if she is working for what she says she's working for? If Kamala Harris is really politically identifying herself as a real American and a Black and an East Indian, then the future for people like me and the races I love is nothing but good. Our future looks good. But if she's just another puppet for the United States of America Corporation and all the foreign owned corporations under that umbrella operating in Washington, D.C., but extending their influence to all of us with lies and taking our participation as endorsement of their crimes against us. Well, if she's just a part of that, then we continue on the same way. But if she's who she says she is, then the new age of America will begin when the Democratic Party wins the race. Okay, I think I covered everything that's been on my mind lately. I'm back on social media because I can't write a book because I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have an internet I can trust because this is public internet that I'm using. And I just don't have the money for the copyright. But most importantly, I cannot relax my mind enough to be able to plan and write a book. I can't sit down long enough. One reason is because I'm too happy to be free. So I spend a lot of time, and him too, he wants to be walking outside all the time. He wants to constantly be walking outside. So between the two of us, we spend a lot of time walking around outside. And I'm just enjoying being alive and seeing the sky and trying to find food and trying to survive the Europeans and looking for apartments to be humiliated and embarrassed by the European women. And I've just been recovering from the trauma of the concentration camp, of the FEMA concentration camp in Houston, Texas. And I don't know. I also found a church to go to as a part of my re-socialization process. And the church I go to is an African Methodist Episcopal church. And that's important to me. That's been important to me and given me a sense of I like worshiping God. I love to worship God, and worshiping God with other people is great. I'm not a Christian, but I just don't make a big deal about it because I have a whole different kind of relationship with the idea of Jesus Christ. And it's not, I look at the Bible as it was created 300 years after Christ was gone. It was created by Constantine for political power. It was created to subjugate the peoples of the world under the idea that they were being good, because being good is important to people outside of Europe. And I just have a lot of problems with Christianity that started when I was a child, when I found that Christianity was not willing to adhere to logic and answer questions logically, that they wanted to answer questions within a certain system, which constantly put them in a loop. So, since I could not intellectually grasp Christianity, I rejected it. And when I read the Bible and all those long genealogies and God is wrathful, but I think God is love, that created a cognitive dissonance as well. So I'm not a Christian, but I'm interested in people that say they love God. Now, I understand that a church will attract as many evil demon worshipers as it will people that love God, because it's all the spirit world. And evil people get power from spiritual places, just like good people do, which is why you'll find so much evil in the Vatican, right? I mean, the Pope and pedophilia, so much evil in the Vatican, because spirituality is very powerful in the evil too. I mean, Satan was an angel in heaven with us before he decided he wanted power and control over God's creation and decided to create evil. However you want to see it, however you want to see it, cosmic level, however you want to see it. I go to the church. I don't make a big deal about what my beliefs are, and I met people I admire there. So it's been really wonderful for me. And the music, I get to sing a little bit on Sundays. Um, if I read the song book and the tunes, you can pretty much predict where it's going to go, because they're basically, when you're as old as me, you've heard so many songs that you can kind of tell where a song is going, and know it before you even hear it entirely. Um, okay, so that's the end of my show tonight. I don't know if I'll feel like being on again anytime soon or not. I know that there are a lot of changes coming up for me. I'll be moving to the hotel outside of Palm Springs very soon on Friday. I'll be moving to a hotel. It's very nice. I would recommend it too. But this hotel is more glamorous, and it's in a more glamorous environment. And I'm so sorry to be leaving here, but I'm so glad I got to be here at the Motel 6 East in Palm Springs, because it's the nicest hotel I've been in just the longest while. And once again, the people treated me wonderfully. And they're Europeans. They're Europeans, and they were so good. So I don't hate them, the Europeans. And I don't even see them as a undifferentiated group. That there's a lot of Europeans that don't want to be a part of racism. They just sort of get scooped up in it because it becomes a part of their survival, right? I mean, we all saw what happened to Donald Trump when he gave money to the Indians of Arizona and made it so the HBCU administrators didn't have to come and beg the white people for money every year. We saw what happened to him for trying to represent more people. But now they created a whole new identity for Donald Trump, have him saying the most horrible things. And they're really putting I have a lot of hope in Kamala. But I'll tell you what I really think. What I really think is that I'm not going to live long enough to see the social change that I need to happen for me to be able to have a life worth living. So I'm still on the same page that I was on before. And here's where I'm going to leave it. One of the things that Cliff High said is that in his analysis, which is very interesting, because I'm not exactly sure where he gets his data, and I have speculated about that before. One of the things he said is that he sees something science fiction happening around January, but he doesn't see much in terms of the human response to it. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you for joining me. I loved being with you.